You go like that, maybe. It's going now.
So now I'm on? Well, hello, I'll continue. This is part 2 of my story of how I got to where I got. When I went to New York to study in a Jewish theological seminary, where I got a Bachelor of Religious Education after 4 years, and Columbia University, where I got a Bachelor of Science in Experimental Psychology. So that was my first introduction to psychology. It was in Columbia University. And I must say, I really loved learning experimental psychology because it gave me a window to a whole other reality where you can create experiments to measure results that you want to find out, not by theorizing, but by actual data. And what is it you want to measure? What do you want to know? What factors do you want to deal with? And how do you measure what happened? What have you learned from it? Now, that was a really good training because it had it's not only all in your head, there's some real science to it. And there are real factors involved. And you can experiment and find out what the results are. For example, one of my experiments was I wanted to find out if intelligence is transmitted through food. Good question. That what you eat has intelligence in it that helps you learn new stuff. Well, so I designed an experiment where I had a bunch of worms going through a maze to find food at the end. And then I would have them run the same maze a few times, and each time they got better, they found out where the food was, and they went for the food. Well, after many trials where I realized they really learned that maze, they were unfortunately dried up and ground up and fed to another group of worms. And then I had an experimental group that did not get fed with that food. They just had the normal diet and see what happens with it. The ones that digested worms that have learned the path will do better than the ones who didn't. And lo and behold, that was the case. So the conclusion was that the food I fed the experimental worms transmitted the intelligence and the information of the worms that learned the maze before them. They were ground up and fed to the other one. Now there's a very important discovery, that the food in fact has intelligence and it transmits it, and so be careful what you eat, because you are what you eat. And so that was an eye-opener. We used to joke around whose professor's brain we would want to eat to transmit the intelligence if you're lazy. But that doesn't quite work. I want to get it on my own, not from. So anyway, that was 4 years of hard work, but great work. I loved my education. I was working as a Hebrew teacher. And the doors were opening up to me to a whole new realm of knowledge, which I found out later on is no stranger to Torah knowledge and the rabbi's understanding of human nature. And ultimately, when I ended up with Kabbalah, I realized what an amazing metaphysical system of psychology it really is. And it's how it encompasses it all, body health, emotional health, spiritual health, and they're all necessary components to this happy, healthy life. So, in my journey to discovering the nature of man, my nature, and what do, I went on to get a PhD in human development and clinical psychology at the University of Chicago. And I got away from purely Jewish world and Jewish thinking into the secular world and its and its assessment of psychology, human nature, human behavior. What are the stages in human behavior from birth to death? It was really wonderful being a graduate student. I worked with great professors. Larry Kohlberg was my mentor. I got a PhD in 3 years. I developed a system of moral development and education that lives way beyond me, where how to help kids become aware of more morality, moral issues, and how to make decisions and what stories. You can look me up on Google under Moshe Blatt, and you see a long list of people who've used my research and my knowledge and my experience to help other people to develop moral consciousness and keep evolving as moral human beings. Good work. I'm really happy with that. But I left it because I realized that academia, and I ended up on the faculty of Harvard, academia is dry, and I knew of better stuff than academia was offering. My Hebrew background seemed to be very rich, where psychology did not offer that. But anyway, so I decided to go on learning and experimenting on my own. Opa, no, you're right. I'm learning how to use this gadget that I know, so bear with me. It's all good. I'm very happy to talk to you. So after almost 10 years of being a doctor of psychotherapy, having been trained in psychoanalysis, client-centered therapy, existential psychotherapy, Gestalt therapy, bioenergetic, and psychosynthesis, and went on to psychoactive, using psychoactive the way the Native American medicine used in healing people, in healing people's soul. They recognize that the soul is the driving force. You heal the soul, you heal the great spirit, you heal the spirit of the being, strengthen it, purify it, and health will emerge. And after 10 years of working as a psychotherapist, learning psychotherapy methods, teaching all those various methods of new psychotherapy to psychologists, psychiatrists, and social workers in South America and North America. I traveled a lot. I was a jet-set psychotherapist and loved my work. But at the end of the day, I felt like psychotherapy, definitely helpful, but it only depends on mostly depends on the quality of the human being who's doing it. Not so much about the method, although the method affects, but the crucial element was the human being behind it. And working on myself was constantly necessary, because the more I understood me, the clearer I was with me, the better I could understand others and help others. The crowning work of training as a psychotherapist was a man called Salvador Roquet from Mexico, who I studied in for 3 years, ancient methods of psychotherapy, using psychoactives in the process of healing. He had his method, he called it soul therapy, because he, like the ancient rabbis, realized that everything begins in the soul. The rabbis say a small hole in the soul, in the body, points to a big hole in the soul. Why? Because the body is dense. By the time it gets down to the body, it's already a big hole in the soul. And if you really want to heal the body, you got to address the soul. The restlessness of the soul, the imbalance in how the soul is used and manifest in life. And after doing that with him for 3 years, I realized that all the methods of psychotherapy left something to be desired. They were like Band-Aids putting on people's wounds. They didn't really go down to the depths necessary to heal somebody, to get into the nitty-gritty of one's psyche, one's soul, one's heart, and have all those emotions dealt with, and the effects would be very limited. And after 3 years with him, I realized that all my previous training, although it was good, led me to that. But in order to really work in that field and really help people transform their lives, the method that Salvador used was illegal. Using psychoactives is not legal in this country. So I dropped out because I couldn't help people the way I really wanted to help. And I went back to my roots doing the Sabbath, and because I realized that in that process of creating a great life, it's beyond psychotherapy. Psychotherapy can help you come to a place where you could maybe hopefully develop a new life. But where does it guide you? How do you go there? What does you do? Beyond psychotherapy, beyond emoting. So I turned to re-examine, after everything I've been as a psychotherapist, my background in my old backyard, my Jewish rabbis and so on. But it went to a whole other level. It went from the written to Kabbalah, to the ancient rabbis who tried to decipher the mysticism and the code that is embedded in that system of ancient teachings that took the best minds on the planet to try to find out what is really the code in Kabbalah, in the Torah, and how do you actually apply it to everyday life. How do you celebrate life? Psychotherapy always tries to deal with the past. How do you end up living a great life in the present? And it's the present that's going to make you happy, not the past. The past is the past. It's over. We live in the present, whether we like it or not. If you hang up to the past, you have no present. And therefore you have no life, because you drag the past into the present, and the present is just another form of the past. So somehow to get to the present, to live fully in the moment, with full consciousness, with the ability and the kalim and the vessels that it takes to celebrate, to enjoy, to have bliss, to feel loved, to be able to share it, to be in a sharing, friendly, loving mode with mankind. That is your and mine ultimate journey where we'll find happiness. It's not found, you can't find happiness ultimately sitting alone in a cave. You may learn a lot. Will you have anybody to love there? No. And in loving is when you become enlightened. And love is a very, very profound force, very misunderstood. Love is the ultimate intelligence on the planet. And it's not a wishy-washy romantic kind of deal. It's a very high level of consciousness and a behavior that comes from a very high place that is congruent to your ideas, that in time grows, you grow in love, you grow, everything loved, if you know it, it becomes better and better over time. It'll heal you better, you'll feel better.